May 1st, 1994. Imola Circuit, Italy. The San Marino Grand Prix. It's a date that really sticks with anyone who follows Formula One.
Absolutely. It marks the tragic loss of Ayrton Senna.
A phenomenal Brazilian driver, already a legend, wasn't he? His life just cut short while he was leading the race.
Yeah. And later, the Italian Supreme Court of Cassation, they ruled it was down to a mechanical failure, a snapped steering column.
But it's crucial to remember this wasn't just one single incident, was it? The whole weekend was just soaked in tragedy.
Exactly. The day before Saturday, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger had a fatal crash during qualifying.
And we also saw that really serious collision involving Rubens Barrichello on Friday.
Right. It was a grim series of events. These are the first fatalities during an F1 race meeting since way back in 1982. Really highlighted the risks involved.
Definitely. So for this deep dive, our goal is to really try and understand the circumstances around Senna's death.
Yeah, look at the findings from the investigations and also explore the huge impact it had on F1 safety.
Exactly. We're mainly drawing on the detailed Wikipedia article about this whole event.
Okay, so let's maybe start by looking at the background leading up to 1994.
Sure. So before he moved to Williams for 94, Senna had that incredible run with McLaren Honda.
3 world championships, 88 to 93.
Right. But in those last couple of years at McLaren, the Williams-Renault cars had become dominant. Real power and tech advantage.
Yeah, everyone knew Senna was maybe the most gifted driver, but the car wasn't always up to it towards the end there.
And then came the big move to Williams. Everyone expected great things.
And the car, the FW16, it was fast. I mean, Williams won the Constructors' title that year.
They did, but Senna himself, he was quite disappointed with how it handled.
He apparently even called Alain Prost, his old rival who just retired, quite a lot to complain about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a car that looked great on paper, but was just difficult to, get the most out of on track.
So why was the handling so tricky?
Well, a few things. Its design was still sort of based around active suspension, which had just been banned. Ah, right, active suspension, that system that kept the car level automatically.
Exactly. Without it, the FW16 apparently had a really narrow setup window. Hard to find that sweet spot for grip and balance. Very little room for error.
Adrian Newey, the designer, called it aerodynamically unstable.
Yeah, Williams had spent years perfecting active suspension, and going back to passive setups was maybe tougher for them than others.
And Senna himself reportedly just didn't feel comfortable in the cockpit physically either.
And it wasn't like they had loads of time to sort these issues out.
No, apparently not enough testing time before the season. Senna even drove a modified, older car, the FW15D, in testing.
And he wasn't happy with it. He described a very negative feeling, said he wasn't comfortable or confident, not giving him the right feedback.
And this lack of preparation, it seemed to show at the start of the 94 season.
Yeah, a really tough start for Senna. Retirements in the first 2 races.
Brazil, his home race, started on pole, led, but then a slow pit stop put him behind Schumacher. Pushed too hard, spun off.
And then the Pacific Grand Prix, pole again, but those handling issues, especially in slower corners, were still there. Got hit from behind, another retirement. His teammate Damon Hill struggled too.
So heading to Imola, the third race, Senna was already 20 points behind Schumacher. Quite a gap.
But there was some hope. Williams brought upgrades to Imola specifically to try and fix those handling problems.
Right, and this is where things take a really dark turn, setting the stage for that awful weekend.
The Friday practice session immediately sounded alarms. Rubens Barrichello.
Young Brazilian driver, kind of mentored by Senna, driving for Jordan.
Yeah, he had a massive crash at the Variante Bassa chicane, high speed.
And Senna was right there, visibly concerned, got out of his own car, went straight to the scene.
Sid Watkins, the FIA doctor, the chief medical officer, he was crucial in saving Barrichello's life right there at the track. A really stark reminder of the dangers.
Even with all that happening, Senna still put the car on provisional pole that Friday. Incredible focus.
But it clearly affected him deeply. Afterwards, he spent hours with his race engineer, David Brown, going over data. Kept the press waiting ages.
And that evening, back at his hotel, apparently a very emotional phone call with his girlfriend, Adrienne Gallisto, broke down recounting Barrichello's crash.
It just shows the immense emotional weight these guys carry, doesn't it?
It really does. Saturday morning, though, a bit of optimism.
Yeah, briefly. Senna and his teammate Damon Hill both felt the car was better with the upgrades.
And Barrichello was okay, released from hospital, even called Senna.
Right. But then, the afternoon qualifying session, tragedy struck again.
Roland Ratzenberger, driving for the Simtech team. A catastrophic crash at the Villeneuve curve.
He damaged his front wing on a previous lap, apparently. A piece broke off completely, lost control.
Hit the concrete wall at immense speed, over 300 kilometers per hour.
The injuries were devastating. Basilar skull fracture, a ruptured aorta. He was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital.
Qualifying stopped immediately. Red flag.
And out of respect, Williams and Benetton, they pulled out when the session eventually restarted.
Senna already had pole from Friday. He saw the replays, immediately went to the pit lane, got a course car.
Went to look at the crash site, then went to the medical center. That's where Sid Watkins told him Ratzenberger had died.
And Watkins apparently said something like, "Ayrton, why don't you withdraw? You don't need to do this. Let's go fishing."
A very poignant moment. But Senna refused. Said he couldn't stop racing.
He went back to the Williams garage, told the team Ratzenberger was dead, clearly deeply upset. Went to his motorhome, broke down.
And then there was that incident with the stewards about using the course car without permission.
Yeah.
Apparently made him angry on top of everything else. Just immense psychological strain.
Unbelievable pressure. Yet, Sunday morning, the warm-up session.
Fastest time. Remarkable.
And he had that breakfast meeting with Elaine Prost.
Yeah, talking about reviving the Grand Prix Drivers Association, the GPDA, focused on improving safety. Planned to meet again before Monaco.
He even filmed an in-car lap for French TV where Prost was commentating, gave him a friendly greeting on camera, surprised Prost apparently.
Then later, the driver's briefing. Senna was still upset about the stewards thing from Saturday.
Asked Gerhard Berger to raise the issue about the safety car speed during the formation laps.
Right. The safety car was just a standard road car, an Opel Vectra. They were worried it was too slow, cooling their tires down too much, losing pressure and grip.
And Senna had tucked an Austrian flag into his cockpit. Planned to wave it for Ratzenberger if he won. Heartbreaking, knowing what was coming.
Then the race start. Chaos.
Pedro Lamy and J.J. Leto collided heavily on the grid.
Debris flew over the fence into the grandstand. Injured spectators, a police officer too.
Safety car deployed immediately for 5 laps.
And those worries about its speed. Immediately obvious. You could see Senna gesturing, trying to get the safety car driver to speed up. Worried about his tires.
Yeah, investigations later showed the Vectra was just not up to the job. Brakes overheating, apparently? It definitely would have dropped tire temps and pressures.
Safety car finally came in at the start of lap 6. Senna pushed hard straight away, set a quick lap.
Then lap 7, only the second lap at racing speed. The unthinkable.
Cambarello corner, high-speed, flat-out left-hander. Senna's Williams just went straight on, left the racing line.
Didn't turn, straight off the circuit into an unprotected concrete barrier.
Telemetry showed he went in at 309 kilometers per hour, about 192 miles per hour.
He braked incredibly hard, downshifted twice, but the impact was still huge. 211 kph, around 131 mile per hour, shallow angle.
Tore the right front wheel and the nose cone right off the car.
Immediately after the crash, Senna was motionless in the cockpit, completely still.
Then, maybe 10 seconds later, just a tiny movement of his head. Very slight.
And that was the last sign, tragically.
The impact, it drove that detached right front wheel back into the cockpit, hit his helmet, the right frontal area. Immense force.
Caused fatal skull fractures, multiple fractures.
And a piece of the suspension also penetrated his helmet. It looked like a jagged piece of the upright assembly went through his visor just above his right eye.
The reports say any one of those injuries could have been fatal on its own.
The severity was just instantly obvious. Fire marshals were there fast, but had to wait for the medical teams.
They got him out within minutes, the world watching live as the medics worked.
There was a lot of blood visible, mostly from a ruptured superficial temporal artery near the temple, caused by that suspension piece hitting him.
Sid Watkins performed an emergency tracheotomy right there on the track to help him breathe.
Watkins later said he felt Senna's spirit depart as they lifted him from the wreck. Such a powerful, sad thing to say.
The race was stopped almost immediately.
And then more danger, more confusion. Eric Comas, who nearly hit the medical helicopter that had landed on the track. Miscommunication from his team.
Senna's car was impounded by the authorities, obviously, for the investigation.
But controversially, someone, reportedly from Williams, insisted on removing the black box data recorder before the car was taken away. That recorder holds all the critical data.
Senna was airlifted to Maggiore Hospital in Bologna.
A brain scan on arrival confirmed the worst. Extremely grave prognosis.
His heart stopped soon after arrival, but they restarted it, put him on life support.
Last rites were given. Then, tragically, his heart stopped again around 6:37 p.m. local time. This time, they didn't try to restart it.
Death officially announced at 6:40 p.m.
Doctors confirmed the main blood loss was that temporal artery. The rest of his body was largely intact. Just shows how localized but catastrophic the head injuries were.
And the Williams team manager was initially told Senna had died in a road traffic accident. A strange euphemism.
The aftermath. Brazil just went into deep mourning. His body was flown back with full national honors.
The state funeral in São Paulo was enormous. Hundreds of thousands lining the streets. An incredible outpouring of grief.
His epitaph reads, Nada pode me separar do amor de Deus. Nothing can separate me from the love of God. Speaks to his faith.
So many figures from motor racing attended, a real testament to his impact.
Though his family reportedly asked Bernie Ecclestone, F1's boss then, not to come. Apparently due to feelings about the race not stopping sooner, and maybe communication issues around the time of death.
Interesting. And Max Mosley, the FISA president, he went to Roland Ratzenberger's funeral instead.
Yeah, Mosley said later he felt it was important someone from the leadership went to Ratzenberger's funeral, as Senna would naturally get most of the world's attention.
The next race in Monaco had those poignant tributes. Empty grid slots painted with the Brazilian and Austrian flags.
Reactions came from everywhere. Juan Manuel Fangio said he knew Senna was gone the moment he saw the crash. Dale Earnhardt and NASCAR offered condolences on air.
Brazil's TV networks just stopped normal programming, total focus on Senna.
And there was immediate, strong criticism of the FIA. Drivers like Schumacher, commentators like Murray Walker, all calling for urgent safety improvement.
Even the Brazilian football team dedicated their 1994 World Cup win to Senna later that year.
These two deaths, Senna and Ratzenberger, they were undeniably the catalyst for a huge safety push in F1.
The FIA held urgent meetings. Even for the very next race in Monaco, they brought in immediate changes.
Stricter pit lane controls, limits on personnel in the pits, staggered pit stop order to reduce chaos.
And maybe most significantly, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, the GPDA, was reformed.
Yeah, led by experienced guys like Niki Lauda, Schumacher, Berger, Brundle were involved. They immediately started pushing the FIA hard for tougher safety rules.
And the FIA did respond quickly. A whole raft of rule changes came in fast.
For Spain, just weeks later, smaller diffusers, smaller front wings, trying to cut downforce, reduce cornering speeds.
Then for Canada, better head protection for drivers, increased car weight, stronger wishbones, longer cockpits for more protection.
Mandated standard pump fuel instead of the exotic stuff, remove engine air boxes, which also cut power a bit.
And beyond the cars, big efforts on track safety too. Better crash barriers, redesigning dangerous corners.
Like Tamburello at Imola. It became a much slower chicane after that. Just a continuous raising of safety standards from then on.
Now, the debate around the exact time of death and the autopsy, that's quite complex and controversial.
It is. During the legal proceedings in '97, based on pathologist testimony, the official time of death was legally set at 2:17 p.m. on May 1st.
The moment of impact, which under Italian law was considered the point of cerebral death, irreversible brain function loss.
Right. But the FIA and the Italian motorsport authorities always maintained death officially occurred in the hospital.
And that difference caused a lot of speculation about why he wasn't declared dead at the track.
Because Italian law says if a death happens at the scene, you have to launch an investigation immediately, suspend the event.
So delaying the official declaration might have avoided that immediate suspension.
That's the question people raised. There were ethical debates, too, among doctors. Was continuing resuscitation appropriate given how severe the brain injury was?
Or were those efforts influenced by, the legal and commercial side of things? Potential impact of declaring death at the track.
The autopsy itself showed the terrible extent. Multiple skull fractures, crushed forehead, the ruptured artery, bleeding in the airways, massive brain damage from deceleration.
Some have even suggested the delay in announcing death was deliberate, precisely to avoid canceling the race meeting because of the financial hit.
It's a very difficult area. Then came the investigation and the trial. Years of complex Italian court proceedings against Williams officials.
Focusing mainly on that modified steering column.
Exactly. The prosecution argued a weld on it failed due to metal fatigue weakening over time, causing the loss of steering and the crash.
Williams always maintained the column broke on impact, not before. That it wasn't the cause.
And details emerged about the modification itself. Senna had asked for the steering position to be changed for comfort before the '94 season.
So they cut the existing column, extended it with a smaller diameter tube, welded it back together with reinforcing plates, done under time pressure apparently.
A technical report for the investigation found fatigue cracks right at that weld point.
And the onboard camera footage seemed to show the steering wheel moving strangely just before the car went off.
Fellow driver Michelle Alboreto even testified that the movement he saw didn't look like normal steering input.
But despite all that, Frank Williams and others were acquitted in 1997.
The judge basically said, yes, steering column failure was the probable cause, but there wasn't enough proof of legal negligence in the design or execution by specific people like Patrick Head or Adrian Newey.
Appeals failed too. Then the case was reopened by the Supreme Court in 2003.
Eventually, Newey got a full acquittal in 2005. The case against Patrick Head was timed out by the statute of limitations.
But the final verdict came in 2007 from the highest court, the Supreme Court of Cassation.
And they stated the accident was caused by steering column failure due to bad design and execution. They pinned responsibility for omitted control on Patrick Head.
But no arrest or prosecution because the statute of limitations had expired. A very complex legal outcome.
Absolutely. And it's important to say, not everyone agreed with that final finding of mechanical failure.
Right. Patrick Head himself, Michael Schumacher, even Senna's teammate Damon Hill, they all publicly suggested Senna might have made a driving error.
And Adrian Newey, in a 2011 interview, he acknowledged the steering column mod was bad, but pointed to telemetry suggesting the car oversteered off track.
Which isn't typical of a total steering failure.
Exactly. Newey mentioned Senna's throttle and braking inputs and raised the possibility of a right rear tire puncture from debris from that start line crash as the most likely trigger for losing control initially.
So even among the key people involved, differing views on the exact sequence remain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wrapping this up, it's clear. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix was this incredibly tragic, pivotal moment in F1 history. The death of a true legend, Ayrton Senna.
And while the Italian Supreme Court did conclude mechanical failure of the steering column was the cause, the precise chain of events, well, it's still debated. Different opinions persist.
The long legal battles really highlight how hard it is to pin down definitive responsibility in these high-speed, technically complex situations.
What's undeniable, though, is the massive lasting impact Senna's death had on Formula One safety.
It was a brutal wake-up call, wasn't it? A turning point that forced a huge, sustained focus on driver safety.
It led to so many reforms in car design, track safety, regulations, fundamentally reshaping the sport, making it much safer.
So considering all the investigations, the technical analysis, the beliefs of those involved, what single factor do you, the listener, think played the most critical role in this tragedy? And how did this awful event really change the Formula One we watch today?
It's something that still prompts reflection on safety, responsibility, and the incredible enduring legacy of Ayrton Senna. Definitely worth thinking about and maybe researching further.